Yeah, hey now, good morning and happy Tuesday, PASW staff, clients, and friends joining us. Welcome. Yesterday we took a look at your film scoring assignment for Harry Potter, so get that into me by today. We'll see the results Friday. It's going to be great. It's going to be very magical and lovely. So can't wait to do that. We're going to talk about somebody who's really very underrated, unknown. Known to a lot of people, but then I don't know how well he's known. I to be honest, I didn't know that much about his music beforehand, and researching and doing this class, I think it's very important for us on many levels to look at this gentleman. So today we're going to look at the very iconoclastic American composer, Louis Moondog Hardin. So his nickname is Moondog, but Louis Hardin. American musician, composer, poet, inventor, and from the age of 16 was blind. There was a little accident that happened on 4th of July, and he opened something up and it blew his eyesight out, so he was completely blind. His music and his influence, in particular on minimalism. So we've talked about minimalist composers. It's been a while, because I wanted to give you guys a little break from it, but we've talked about Philip Glass, we talked about Steve Reich, we talked about John Adams, we've talked about Michael Nyman. These guys were really influenced, and Steve Reich in particular and Philip Glass both cite him as their biggest influence, one of their biggest influences of minimalism music. This is really early, the stuff, the kind of music he was writing in the 50s about was really revolutionary, but it sounded really melodic and good. So let's get into Moondog.
Do your thing, be fancy free to call a tune you sing.
So we gotta leave Hogwarts because we're grown-ups now, so we can go over to Kansas City. My favorite part, and your favorite town, of course. So he's born in 1916. Let's look at our timeline here. 1916, that's a long time ago. This is after Scott Joplin, but he is, his music sounds like early jazz. It swings a lot, but he was a classical composer. He started playing drums that he made from cardboard boxes at the age of 5. And he really loved listening to ragtime music with Scott Joplin, of course, and the military brass bands. Who else liked that stuff? Charles Ives was the other American composer that we looked at, who was very into ragtime and military marching bands and brass bands. So it's interesting when these people hear these types of music, and then they incorporate classical training. It's hard to get rid of that influence or subdue it when you're grown up with hearing these kind of things. So in Moondog's music, it was very influenced by this. And then he found an object in the field and didn't realize it was a dynamite cap, and it detonated and permanently blinded him. So, but he knew he had a little music training, and after learning the principles of music in several schools for blind men across Middle America, he taught himself music. He taught himself through using his ears, ear training and composition, and then he studied at the Iowa School for the Blind. So, although he was largely self-taught, he learned music theory from books in Braille. 1943, Hardin moves to New York. Of course, New York is the place where everything is happening. Jazz is starting to happen, and bebop, and also people like Leonard Bernstein. Toscanini, these guys are taking, as well as Charlie Parker and Benny Goodman, they're taking notice of this musician, Louis Hardin, Moondog. They're taking notice of him he's got these very upbeat tempos and humorous compositions. There's a lot of humor in his music that he's writing. And he was very well known to the jazz musicians and very friendly with a lot of them. In 1947, he gets his name Moondog in honor of a dog that used to howl at the moon. And kind of the 40s to the early 70s, he lives as a street musician. He's kind of homeless. I mean, he lived in and out of places, including he lived with Philip Glass for a while. And he'd hang out in Midtown Manhattan in a Nordic-looking outfit. He was 6'3", 6'4", eccentric guy, to say the least. And he would make money selling his poems for 25 cents, or he would perform for money, and he would just kind of, stand out, and people would say, to the cab, take me, I want to go meet Moondog, and the cabbie would know exactly where to go. But in New York, I mean, he gets a record deal, and he's written, he writes hundreds of compositions, and they were transferred from Braille to sheet music. So he had it transcribed. Somebody transcribed it from Braille to sheet music. And then after New York, he spends the rest of his life in Germany, because close to his idols, Bach and Beethoven. And dies in 1999 from heart failure in Germany. Lives a long life, and what are we listening to? This is hard music to classify, isn't it? It's like with each piece I'm playing, it's almost like, I mean, you hear some pop influences, you definitely hear classical, you hear jazz. We've talked a little bit about third string music with Charlie Mingus. It's contemporary jazz and classical. It's got ambient sounds. You hear, at times you hear parts of the city, of New York City, of the environment that he's using, of the city and traffic. This is the basis of his music. I mean, he's a street musician and wrote 81 symphonies, works for orchestra, chamber and brass ensembles, uses the saxophone, I mean, really brilliantly. Works for piano and organ in about 50 songs. It's very melodic. He wasn't very into atonal music, and that's something that a lot of composers, Schoenberg and even Stravinsky later on, that were into atonal, meaning without a tonal center. He was very melodic. He wasn't in that school, and I think that's what attracted Philip Glass and Steve Reich and those composers, because those guys weren't into, they respected the hell out of John Cage, but they weren't into that kind of music. And so they wanted to incorporate, how do we get melody and rhythm in our music, and how do we make these things more important than having confusing music on the page, looking like, where it looks more impressive to have a messy looking score than it is to actually want to hear something. So he was kind of anti-establishment in that realm, but knew everyone. Frank Zappa, Janis Joplin, everybody was interested in this guy. So I just thought it was somebody that we should talk about, great American composer, somebody who's should be more recognized, is becoming more recognized, I think. There's supposed to be a documentary that's coming out about him that I'm very excited to see, but it does sound like great quintessential American music, and American classical jazz music that is just really just terrific. And I'm very happy with doing these classes and discovering with you these new composers, musicians, thinkers, creative type people that have changed the world, have changed our world. So that's Louis Hardin, Moondog. So now we know about him. Okay, tomorrow's going to be, terrific, of course. It's going to be Bonnie-rific even. So I'll see you guys. Love you and miss you, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.